Hello everybody, welcome back to Gotta Get Running. Hopefully everybody out there is surviving the hot summer that we're having here in Washington, D.C. It's been so hot. Hopefully you're staying hydrated, drinking lots of water, and still getting out there and doing some running, whether it's outside in the heat, carefully, or on a treadmill. We hope you guys are all out there and getting running. But we're excited to be back here with you. We have a really special guest we'll introduce you to here in just a minute, but I want to start off by welcoming Chris Farley back to the show. Chris, good to see you again.
Thanks for having me again, Phil. Exciting show, man. I'm excited. We've got a really good guest, and we've got a race tonight that we're taping that we might talk a little bit about in the heat and the running, but we've really got an exciting guest that we're thrilled to have, an Olympian nonetheless. So that should be a fun show. Well,
it is quite a special treat to have our guest with us. Why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest to everybody out there? This
is Brian Sell. He's an Olympic marathoner in the 2008 Olympics in Beijing. He's got a long list of accomplishments, but we're thrilled to have him. And we're going to talk a little about his running and his accomplishments with what he's done with the marathon and all other distances that he's competed in.
Well, Brian, thanks for coming on the show. We're excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
I know you had a couple complications getting here, but
it's good to be in DC finally. Yeah, we had a little weather up there in Detroit, and got in a little later this morning than I hoped, but it's good to be here.
Yeah, I figured you guys were off doing like a 22-miler or something, and then
I wish that'd been better than the marathon I had in the airport.
You're like O.J. Simpson running through the airport there, like hurdling over the chairs and everything. But this is great, man. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Everybody, Brian Sell was on the 2008 Olympic team in Beijing, and it was quite an accomplishment. He did the Olympic trials we'll get to here the previous fall at 2007 in New York. So, quite an accomplished runner. And why don't you just start by telling us basically about yourself, where you're from, just start from the bottom, just a little bit about Brian Sell.
Okay. Well, I grew up just a little bit northwest of here in a little town called Woodbury, PA. It's closest semi-large town would be Altoona, just southeast of Pittsburgh. And grew up sort of on a farm. My granddad was a dairy farmer. My dad was actually an electrical engineer, so we didn't actually milk, but I did, raise pigs.
That's me the next question.
I did raise pigs and stuff like that for the fair. So, it was pretty small town America, and got into running more or less to get in shape for wrestling. I mean, wrestling and football were the two big sports
in
my high school. Yeah. And if you wanted to, date a cheerleader, you had to play one of those two. And
see, the wrestlers don't get the girls down here in D.C. It was the football players.
Yeah. Well, I was 150
you
pounds of girth here. I wasn't. Wrestling was probably a little better sport for me. But I was just kind of running out of gas in the third period, and my coach recommended why don't you go out for the track team, since I got beaned, I think, 22 times in Little League. So I decided to give up on baseball pretty early. I think I had the county record for that or something. But I went out for track just to get in shape for wrestling, and then got into the mile. That was how I sort of got into it.
That's cool.
So you, it's funny, you're an Olympic runner, Olympic marathoner, a very accomplished runner now, but it wasn't always the case. Tell us a little about your middle school to high school running days.
Yeah, I didn't really run much of anything in middle school. I played a little bit of club soccer, and that was about it. But really started running 10th grade, and I wasn't just sort of slowly progressed. It was a good enough progression to keep me interested and to keep me excited about running. But I certainly wasn't national or even state caliber. I made the state meet 3 years in a row, but it was more a reasoning of how weak my district was than how competitive I was. We had about 12, 13 districts in Pennsylvania, and the winner of every district meet got to go to states. And but my PRs are pretty modest. We ran the 1,600 meters and the 3,200 meters as opposed to the mile, 2 mile, and I ran a 4:32 in the 1,600 and about a 10:08 in the 3,200. So. Compared to my Olympic teammates, I was pretty far behind both of those guys at the high school level. But
what kind of times would your Olympic teammates, Dathan Ritzenheim and Ryan Hall made the Olympic team with you? What were their high school PRs in comparison?
I know Ritz. I think he ran about an 8:42 in the 2 mile, so that would convert to probably high 8:30s in the 3,200. Right. So those guys would have been, and Ryan Hall was similar. He was probably 8:50, something like that. So those guys would have easily lapped me in a high school race. Right. And basically it was It took me a good solid. I graduated in '96, so it took me and made the team in 2007. So it was a good what would that be? A good 10,
11 years.
11 years to catch up. But
did it help you with your wrestling career at all?
It did, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I went from from kind of, they called it fishing around on the mat, where you just kind of flop around for the third period. Yeah. To being pretty strong in that area, and that sort of became it went from being the worst part of my wrestling matches, the third period, to the best till I was a senior. So it definitely helped.
And the conditioning is always a factor for those high school. I was a high school wrestler too, 145, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And the third period was, our team was always really well conditioned, lots of closeouts, lots of suicides, and some running. We never went more than like 3 or 4 miles, it seemed, but the conditioning was certainly one of the things that would help you win at the high school level. Do you think that also, since you were a late bloomer, if you will, in running, has that helped you in your running career, like later on with Olympics?
I definitely think it extended my career a little longer than a lot of people. I mean, I think one of my teammates back in Michigan, Clint Viren, and I used to hypothesize that you have about an 8 to 10 year window of being top of your game, and it doesn't matter where that is. If somebody gets into running at age 40, they're going to probably have a window there where they set all their PRs, run their best races, and then it's going to tend to fall off, and you don't know where that might happen. So you see it all the time with kids that are just phenomenal in high school, and then they go to college, get a little bit worse, and you don't hear too much about them after that. Dathan Ritzenhein and Ryan Hall are sort of the two anomalies, as they've had great careers since high school all the way through. They're also a little bit younger than I am. But I think it definitely helped me to time it right, where I got a little better in college, and then I had probably my best years at the professional level.
So talk about your high school days. You're a good runner, but not a superior runner. Talk about your college days, and then getting into the Hanson Brooks Distance Project. Talk a little about both of those for me.
I went right out of high school. I went to Messiah College in Harrisburg, PA. And it was a small Division III school, and I didn't want to go to college. I didn't want to run after high school, and I basically picked this school based on the cafeteria food. So it was totally a shot in the dark. I mean, my dad, I didn't want to go to college, and my dad said I was going to college.
Wow.
So, and I went there for 2 years, and honestly, it was another sort of a good luck situation, much like my high school. I mean, I didn't have the super stiff competition that totally made me give up right away, but I had enough to keep me motivated. So going from high school to the D3 level would have been better than going from high school straight to the Division I level.
Right.
I ran there for 2 years and then transferred to St. Francis, which was a D1 school, to be a little bit closer to home, and I got a little bit of scholarship there too, so that was reason to switch. And all along the way, my mileage is slowly building. In high school, I was probably 30, 40 miles a week. Messiah bumped it up to maybe 60 to 70, and then St. Francis, I topped out at about 100 miles a week. I ran 3 100-mile weeks my senior year, and sort of the same deal after college. I mean, I probably could have got a job somewhere, we were out on a family vacation in Wisconsin, and my coach at St. Francis told me to check out this Hanson's deal that they just started up in Detroit, and we swung by, and it was more just a sort of a thing of putting real life on hold for another couple years. So I just sort of kind of lucked into it. Gave me a couple years off of getting a real job and getting into the grind.
What made you think that you could go run professionally and be good at this? I mean, you were good, but you weren't Dathan Ritzenheim or Ryan Hall by any means.
I still had that hunger. I mean, I guess that was the big thing. I still felt like there was something I wanted to accomplish. I wasn't ready to be done. I was a mediocre college runner to decent. I mean, I was an All-American in track and cross my senior year, but I was pretty far back. It was more of a function of the amount of foreigners that were ahead of me, because they don't count toward All-Americans. So back in the 70s, I wouldn't have even been in the picture, but luckily, there were enough Kenyans and so forth ahead of me that I bumped up and got my All-American certificate. But I just felt like I still had some unfinished business. I qualified for the World University Games in Beijing, actually, in 2001, based on my 10K performance in college. And went over there, and I was actually 4th on the list for the 10K, so they bumped us to the half marathon because there wasn't a formal qualification for that. So it was Matt Downen and Brandon Leslie that year ran the 10K there, and a guy from Washington, David Bozzi, and I ran the half marathon. And I had no idea how to train for a half marathon. I hadn't even run hardly even run 13 miles in my college career at one time. And I went over there and ran, I think, 105.30, and I was fourth, just off of summer training. I put swimming pools in all summer and ran 5 miles in the morning and 10 miles in the afternoon, and I was well prepared for the heat and went over and ran well. So I think that, in addition to just sort of wanting to put real life on hold, made me continue on with my career, or give it a shot anyhow.
Yep. So talk a little about, then you ran professionally for the Hanson Brooks project. Talk a little about that, and then how you got from there to make an Olympic team.
Yeah, well, Kevin and Keith Hanson started a program in Detroit, Michigan, actually Rochester, Michigan. It's a little bit north of Detroit. Back in, I think it was 98 or 99, and they just bought a couple houses in the area, and they had about 3 or 4 running stores in the area, and they just recruited guys out of college to come in, and you'd work in the running stores for grocery money and then live in one of these houses for free, so you could sort of pursue your dream. And you got some gear and a little bit of travel and stuff like that. So it was a way, other than the big sponsorships, which I don't think any of the guys that are on the team now or ever were on the team would have been able to have, like from a Nike or something. We weren't that level, but we still had that desire. It gave us an opportunity to sort of start at the ground level and see what we could do with our running. So I went out there, and in 2001 I moved out right after September 11th, and just started pounding the big miles. I started out basically where I left off at St. Francis, right around 100 miles a week, and over the last 9 years or so, I've been bumping up probably an average of 10 miles a week every year. So, the first 2001, the first year out there, I was averaging probably 100 miles a week. 2002, 110. 2003, 120, all the way up to about 165. I peaked out at going into the Olympic trials and the Boston Marathon, stuff like that.
Wow.
So speaking of high mileage, I mean, most of what I know about running is from what I've read in books. I just recently, a couple years ago, started using a running coach, and he's helped me with my training a lot. But everything you read in the books is increasing by about 10%, which it sounds like exactly what you did in those cases.
Yeah, that's pretty much the Hansons actually have a training program out there in conjunction with their stores as well. And that's pretty much the rule of thumb for just about anything it can just about apply to. You don't want to go too much more than 10% from week to week if you're a beginning runner. So if you're running 10 miles the first week, you don't want to go up much more than 11 the next week and slowly increase it like that. And that was definitely one of the main keys to my getting on the Olympic team, but also probably the big key that I never really had an injury that took me out for more than about a week at a time. I mean, I've had some niggling issues here and there, some plantar fasciitis and stuff, but nothing that took me out for a long period of time.
So you were running high mileage from 2001. You make the Olympic trials in 2004. Talk